It's been a lot easier this year to make it through each day without doing something overly rebellious or sometimes mostly just stupid as I've done in the past. And the difference this year is that more than ever in my life, I have a sense of purpose. And that purpose comes from the 140 students who I have both the privilege and the challenge to work with every day at Cardozo Education Campus. When I was in high school, I sold $10,000 worth of citrus fruit.
Yeah, citrus.
And I got really good at selling people things, whether I thought they needed them or not. And this year, though, I had the opportunity to sell something that I really believed in, and that was the value of education and its ability to nurture the students' curiosity and thoughtfulness towards the world around them. My teacher partner, Mr. Holman, and I, we invited the Free Minds Book Club. It's an organization that works with incarcerated and previously incarcerated DC youth. We invited them into the classroom to speak and to read poetry. And for the first time all year, I didn't see a single cell phone out. There weren't any side conversations about who's beefing with who, or how bored everybody is. The class was engaged, and they were asking questions, and they were sharing their experiences with each other. And it was so amazing to see that kind of completely engaged learning environment was possible if you're willing to think outside the box, because there was learning going on in there, and it was a great experience. But the next class after that was just as hard as the hardest class before that to turn into a positive educational experience. It didn't get any easier. And at times during the city year, it felt like playing against a loaded deck. We were forced into situations where we had to try to impose order on all the chaos caused by a value-starved, unequal society that is looking for quick and easy solutions.
Tell it, Martin! You're so dope.
And what made the experience even more taxing on us was that we knew that every hand that we lost meant that the students we were working with every day, we had learned to care so much about were being failed. Because we as a society were failing every single day to provide these students with an environment and a structure that encourages a love of learning and discovery, which is something that no standardized test has ever even attempted to measure.
Yeah, brother.
And the thing is, when we treat our students as numbers, they know better than anyone else exactly what's really going on. I had a student who I worked with, and her name was Shania. I had her in first period English. And it took me about a month into the school year to even know who she was, because she was not much of a morning person. School started at 8:45, and Shania didn't roll in until around 10 o'clock. So a month in, I find out who she is. I don't really know her though, but I find out that she's, it's not just my class. She skips other classes too, and she's failing every single one of her classes. And I decide that I'm gonna try and do something about it. So I go up to her in the cafeteria, and I use my salesman voice. I'm selling all that fruit. And I say, Shania, if you come to class tomorrow, I'm going to buy you a candy bar. And she said, she's smart. She said, what kind of candy bar? And I was like, whatever kind you want. But I could tell that she wasn't really convinced. She told me she liked Twix. I could tell she wasn't convinced. So I said, I'm going to sweeten the deal. You don't even have to get there on time. It's okay. Just 9:15. It gives you half an hour leeway. At 9:15, I will buy you that Twix. And she's like, I'm going to see. So the next day, I'm in class. Bell rings at 8:45. She's not there. That's okay. It's all good. 9 o'clock. I'm looking up at the clock. I'm looking at the door. 9 o'clock, 9:15, 9:30, 9:45, 10 o'clock. Class ends at 10:05, and she hasn't come to class. So at lunch, I go into the cafeteria, and I see Shania. She's just sitting there hanging out. I go up to her and say, Shania, I didn't see you in class today. And she was like, I know. And I was like, didn't you want that Twix? And she was like, man, I bought myself a Twix, and it was delicious. And in that moment, I realized the importance of treating our students as equals and seeking to understand rather than just correct their opinions and their choices. You can't change someone. You can only give them the tools to change themselves. And when you do that, you yourself are changed in the process.
Martin!
Now, Shania, she was not the biggest fan of the DC cast, but I was surprised she came to it. And that was good. And she kind of raced through it, and it took about 15 minutes. And then she put the packet away, and then she took her piece of scrap paper, and she just started writing on it. She wasn't doing the test anymore. She was just writing on this piece of scrap paper, and she wrote nonstop for half an hour. And then the only reason she stopped was because she ran out of paper. So she asked for another piece of paper, and she kept writing for another half hour. And at the end of the test, I'm not sure how she did on the test, but she had 2 pages of writing. So I went up to her and I said, Shania, it looks like you like to write. And she was like, duh. And I was like, how do you feel about joining the creative writing club that we're trying to put together? And she's like, all right, I'm gonna see. And I wasn't expecting her to come, but she showed up, and she wrote one of the most beautiful pieces of writing that I've read all year. And I'm not just talking about student writing, I'm talking about any writing. What she wrote was personal, and it was thoughtful, and had an extended metaphor in it. When I was in high school, I don't even know what an extended metaphor was. And I'm not sure that she knew either.
That's citrus.
But the depth of her thoughts and her understanding of her feelings was so much so that she needed an extended metaphor to convey what was going on in her head. Now, I'd like to say that, I figured out how to inspire Shania to turn her life around. I'd like to say that she's a straight A student now, comes to class every day on time. But that's not the way it is. Shania is still failing all her classes. And, even though I've only seen her in class a few more times, she comes after school and we talk about her writing. And all I can do is encourage her and hope that, one day she sees how important her voice is to share with the rest of the world, and that when she realizes that the world is ready to listen to her. So all y'all sitting here, our year of service is over, except for Cardozo. And there's a question that we have to ask ourselves, and that is it worth it? Is it worth it, putting ourselves on the line every day? Now, this has been a hard year. It's been a butt-kicking year. It's like every single day is hard. So the question is, where do we go from here? When I think about my students, when I think about the obstacles that they face before even stepping in the classroom, when I think about my students who have been shot at, when I think about my students who have been homeless, when I think about my students whose parents have been killed by gun violence, when I think about my students whose parents are struggling with drug addictions, when I think about my students who have attempted suicide, who have been molested by their parents, when I think about my students who have been arrested and incarcerated for years in a federal prison 1,000 miles away from home, when I think about these students, there's no question in my mind that there's more work to do. And it's not easy. But when I think about Shania, I think about Juan, I think about Bazil, I think about Ronte, I'm willing to keep putting myself out there. Because things aren't going to change unless someone does something about them. We've been on the front line, we've seen what's really going on. We know how it is. And I guess what Margaret Mead was saying, she kind of stole my thunder a little bit, because I was going to say a similar thing.
Margaret.
Whatever. But, it's true, whenever determined individuals decide that they're going to do something, that they're going to work together, I think that's another key piece. You can't do it alone. You got to work together. When people decide to work together to overcome their differences, when they decide to be creative about the problems that are being faced, when all that happens, things start to change. And it doesn't have to wear you out. If trying to save the world wears you out in the process, honestly, it's not worth doing it. But I feel like this year has kind of inspired me. It's made me feel good about the work that I'm doing. And I want to talk about, this year I had the opportunity to participate in the Alternatives to Violence project in prison. And I was mentored by a guy there by the name of Benevolent Basir. And he really led by example, and he showed me that when you decide to live a life that is both kind and thoughtful, that effort will have unending ripple effects in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. And the key that I have been shown to living both a happy and purposeful life is to try to feel connected to those around you and to learn from them, especially those whose voices aren't heard, and to work to empower them to share in the struggle for a better tomorrow. And it's not just our tomorrow, it's everyone's tomorrow. In closing, I want to thank my parents. There are a few things I want to thank you for. Free rent. Dad, you woke up at 5 o'clock every morning, and you drove me to the metro, and you waited until I was done, and you took me home. We were gone for 13 hours. You also made my lunch every morning. And you didn't complain a single time. The only thing you ever complained about was how I was drinking all your beer.
Yeah, Martin!
I'm not sure I would have made it through the year without that. And Mom, whenever we got home, there was a damn good meal on the table just waiting for and all y'all sitting here, I want to thank you too. I want to thank you for every time you made a student laugh, every time you made a student believe in themselves, every time you made a student believe that they could be